Smoke alarms warnings can cut the risk of dying from a fire in your home by almost half, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. WIFR reporter Alyssa Kelly talks with fire experts about efforts to get more detectors in more homes.
Every building in Illinois, especially those where people live, are required to have smoke alarms. Newer detectors even have a 10-year sealed battery to make sure it stays in workable condition. But even with the laws, experts say they still find some apartment complexes without any warning system.
People just don't think it's going to happen to them, and it does.
3 of every 5 home fire deaths happen in living spaces with no working smoke alarms.
There's times you're not going to wake up, and the smoke is what's going to kill you first.
You only have minutes to escape during a house fire, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. A fire alarm's warning could cut the risk of dying from a fire by almost half.
The importance of smoke detectors obviously would be early detection and warning. So the quicker individuals in their homes and or apartments or businesses can be warned, the quicker they can get out.
Smoke alarms in Illinois must now have a 10-year sealed battery, giving you longer-term protection. That law went into effect on January 1st, 2023. If yours isn't updated, you could receive a fine.
We found that, unfortunately, people don't change the batteries like they should. Sometimes they'll take the batteries out because when they're cooking, they create smoke at times. We've had many cases where we found non-working, non-functioning smoke alarms, and unfortunately, a part of those times were just because either the product failed because the batteries were dead or they had been taken out previously and were never put back in place.
Local fire departments like Rockford's also get funding to provide and sometimes install detectors free of charge. And local leaders say that helps save lives.
The single most easiest tool to install that can really have an impact on your life.
Those in violation of the Illinois smoke alarm law will have 90 days to change their smoke detectors or risk the fines of up to $100 every 30 days until the violation is straightened out.
The Illinois Fire Safety Alliance encourages everyone to plan and practice escape routes, test smoke alarms monthly, replace your smoke alarms every 10 years, and when there is a fire, leave the home immediately and call 911.